Today, we're talking blade baits. Blade baits. These, I feel like, are the secret weapon that you got to keep in your back pocket for any time the fishing gets really tough. Now, if you guys have never heard of a blade bait before or seen one, this is what they look like. It's a very unique bait, and there's really not much to it. They look very similar to a lipless crank, but they don't have the rattles. So as you guys can see, it's just like a thin piece of steel with a weight in the front. We got lead in the belly of that bait. This bait will catch you fish year round, but it really excels in cold water. Anytime that you guys are keying in on small bait fish or really cold water, it's never a bad idea to pick up a blade bait. And when I say cold water, I'm talking there is no water too cold to fish a blade bait. You can literally take a blade bait, drill a hole in the ice, and start ice fishing with one, and they will still produce fish. So that's what's really cool about this bait. For some of you guys who are diehards, you're not afraid of the cold weather, you're ready to get out there in those 30-degree temperatures or less, you can pick up a blade bait and still get on a bass bite. So looking at blade baits, there are so many different styles and sizes. You can get them that look just like this, very traditional. You can get them in tiny little sizes for ice fishing, and you can even get some different ones like this guy right here. This is the Death Stalker by 10,000 Fish. As you guys can see, it's got a hook in the front, but an underspin hanging off the back. So when you guys want, you can change it up depending on when you are fishing, but I would recommend going with something a little more crazy when the water's warmer, and then just staying as simple as possible when it comes to fishing in really cold water temperatures. The blade bait can be fished in many different ways. You guys can cast it out there, you could retrieve it like a lipless crank, you could aggressively pop it if you want, or you can just be plain Jane, drop it off the side and vertical jig it real slowly. Now, what really helps out with the blade baits is the slim profile of the body and the small hooks that come on the bait. Oftentimes in cold water, bass aren't necessarily going out of their way to eat. Now, bass do not hibernate. A lot of people think that fish just don't eat anymore in the wintertime, and that's not exactly it. What actually happens is the fish's metabolism slows down. So they will eat, but they're just less likely to eat as much. So if you can get something in their face that's gonna trigger a strike, they'll nip at it. Now, when it comes to those fish nipping, that's where these small hooks really come into play. Oftentimes you can get that hook in its mouth and get that fish to the boat. Now, when you're fishing in really cold water, you're not gonna feel that bite. So when it comes to working a blade bait, I would recommend fishing it slow and high. So when I say that, oftentimes you're gonna cast it out there, or if you're vertical jigging, you're just gonna drop it straight down. I'm constantly gonna try and pick up my rod tip and drop it down, because you're not gonna exactly feel the strike from that fish. You're gonna be relying on the dead weight that's gonna hit the tip of your rod as you lift it up in the air. So with that being said, let's talk about the rod setup that you guys wanna fish with a blade bait. Now, for me personally, I like to fish a lighter spinning rod setup when it comes to fishing blade baits, but the rod that you choose is gonna be personal preference. The reason that I like a lighter rod setup like a 7-foot medium or like a 7.3 medium, I pretty much try to stay like with a Ned rig rod or a drop shot rod. The reason that I like to go with that is because I'm lightly fishing. I'm usually fishing really cold water when I'm picking up a blade bait, and I wanna make sure I ease that fish to me. When I say that, I mean I just wanna pick up my rod tip, let that rod tip do the hook set for me, and just with a steady drag, bring that fish in. These hooks are not big, so when it comes to a hook set, if you're gonna really ram that bait, odds are you're gonna pull that hook out of the fish's mouth. So I'm typically fishing a lighter rod setup. That's what I like. I will typically fish braided line with a light fluorocarbon leader as well, but there are a lot of guys out there that do fish a bait caster. You don't always have to fish a spinning rod with lighter stuff. Now, that's just me. There is a handful of guys out there that love to vertical jig blade baits next to the boat with a bait caster. Again, maybe just lighten up the bait caster. You don't want to go out there with a frog rod, but a lot of guys will use their go-to jerkbait rod or their crankbait rod when it comes to fishing a blade bait. It allows that bait to load up nicely. You know, you don't have to set the hook real hard. It's really going to come down to personal preference, but a bait caster is a great way to go when it comes to fishing a bait like this guy right here. This is a 1/2 ounce Death Stalker by 10,000 Fish. So that's a lot heavier than this guy right here that's a 3/16 ounce blade baits. So with all that being said, the number one thing to know with blade baits is that they are super versatile. They'll catch fish year round, but they are the go-to bait when it comes to fishing cold water. You guys can fish them any way that you like. It's gonna come down to personal preference. Pick out the rod that suits you the best, pick out the movement that seems to work the best for you, but just know that there are many different ways to fish a blade bait. You don't have to just cast it out there, reel it straight in. Change up your presentation, find the way that works the best for you, and just make sure you keep a blade bait in your box at all times. This bait can be a lifesaver anytime that you run into really finicky fish or tough fishing conditions. If you didn't know much about blade baits before, or you weren't really too motivated to fish them, hopefully this video maybe changes your mind. I promise you guys, it's always a good thing to have in your back pocket. It's like a secret weapon at times. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching this breakdown on blade baits. If you guys are new here, do me a favor, consider hitting that subscribe button. If you got any questions at all, leave a comment down below. I'll try to answer them for you. But I will catch you guys in the next one.